On Capitol Hill, Cheryl Atkinson reports senators today could barely contain their frustration over the efforts to stop the leak.
This is just a small portion of the undersea video BP didn't want you to see. Only after senators demanded it and CBS News filed a Freedom of Information request did BP finally release selected, edited portions this afternoon. From May 10th, here's the oil plume before BP inserted the straw-like device to collect some of the oil. This is the same plume with the collection device in place yesterday. Barbara Boxer is one senator who pressed BP to give up the video.
It's hardly holding back any oil. I mean, it's just still a massive situation.
Today, Interior Secretary Ken Salazar said more oil is being captured now than shown in yesterday's video.
It was ramped up through the day and overnight.
Even so, a flow measurement expert who looked at the new video says BP and the government's estimates of how much oil is leaking, 5,000 barrels or 210,000 gallons a day, is wildly and inexplicably low.
The estimates are not to be believed, still in the ballpark of 3 million gallons per day.
Also made public a short clip showing BP's failed effort to contain the leak by lowering a giant box on top of it.
Why did it take two senators to demand for BP to release this video and explain to them this is in the public's interest?
You would have to ask BP why it is that they tried to withhold this film. But right now, they've given it to us. And all I could say is better late than never. But yes, we've lost precious time, and we're going to try to make up for that right now.
Even more surprising, this admission from the Coast Guard today at one of 3 hearings on Capitol Hill.
Was BP not providing full access to the video footage?
It's been coming into the command centers real time for us since the start of the event, sir.
According to Senator Boxer, the Coast Guard didn't bother to record the video themselves or tell Congress until asked.
BP now says it's had up to 14 robotic vehicles recording undersea video. Senators say they expect to get all of the rest of it tomorrow and will make it available to the public and independent experts. Katie?
Cheryl Atkinson reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. We just heard BP may be having some success, but still no one really knows just how much oil is leaking from that blown out well. Cheryl Atkinson tells us Congress hopes to find out by examining video from the bottom of the Gulf. But some members say the oil company hasn't been much help.
Any hope of immediate access to real-time undersea video evaporated today. BP refused to deliver anything more than brief edited clips.
BP, I think, thinks that it's their ocean, so they should be able to control all of this information. This is BP's spill, but it's the American people's ocean that they are polluting right now.
Congressman Markey didn't stop with BP. He blasted the Coast Guard for letting BP call the shots. Coast Guard officials were on a boat with BP contractors that stopped our cameras from viewing an oily beach. And the Coast Guard, which is in charge of the investigation, admits it's had access to live video since day one, but won't let Congress or the public see it. Today, Interior Secretary Ken Salazar seemed to think the video had been turned over.
My understanding is that those materials are available.
When we told him they aren't, he said it will all come out in the investigation. Today, independent scientists told Congress the video is crucial to stopping the leak, figuring the impact, and seeing what tactics work.
Can you think of a reason why BP and the Coast Guard would withhold the video from public viewing?
I can't.
The scientists also couldn't explain why BP and the government are using the figure of 5,000 barrels or 210,000 gallons a day. An independent oil flow expert said it's at least 2 leaks totaling 95,000 barrels or 4 million gallons a day. As for BP's number,
I don't see any possibility, any scenario under which their number is accurate.
Late today, BP said it will give select members of Congress only access to the live undersea feed of the leak soon. Katie?
Cheryl Atkinson, thanks very much. It happened 1 month ago tonight, the oil rig explosion that led to the biggest spill in at least 2 decades. And today, the Obama administration blasted BP for not keeping the government and the public informed. In a letter to the company's CEO, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano says BP's efforts have, quote, fallen short in their scope and effectiveness. Exhibit A, this picture from a live undersea camera feed that BP finally made available today. It shows oil is still spewing into the Gulf of Mexico, a lot more than the company had admitted. By even the most conservative estimate, more than 6 million gallons has already poured into the Gulf. Cheryl Atkinson begins our coverage tonight from Capitol Hill. And Cheryl, BP really had no choice but to admit this leak was much bigger than they'd been saying.
The timing, in fact, Katie, was probably partly due to the fact that the public today would be getting its first extensive look at the leak.
Ours were the first cameras to see BP's live undersea feed. This feed was provided to Congressman Ed Markey.
I think BP has known the scope of the problem all along.
BP also looped in 2 senators who've been after the video for 10 days, Barbara Boxer and Bill Nelson.
How hard was it? It was exceptionally hard. It took 2 committees and 2 U.S. senators to finally get them to produce it.
The disturbing pictures leave nothing to imagination. They show in real time the thousands upon thousands of gallons of oil gushing into the Gulf unabated. The black tube with stripes is the straw-like device now siphoning off 5,000 barrels a day. But look how much isn't being collected. The white skinny tube is what was until midnight injecting chemicals into the plume to break up the oil. Under new orders from the EPA, BP now has to switch to less toxic chemicals. This video, obtained exclusively by CBS News, shows a light-colored cloud which could be dispersant mixing with the oil May 2nd. BP has already used 655,000 gallons of the toxic dispersants. Congress has questioned why BP chose these chemicals bought from a company where a former BP executive sits on the board. Now the 3 members of Congress who finally have the video are working to quickly get it into the hands of experts who can make sense of it.
We need objective parties to have access to this information.
This clip shows a robot arm working to prevent a leak 2 days after the explosion. 2 days later, the Coast Guard confirmed leaking had begun. On May 3rd, a robot arm works painfully without success on a gushing pipe. Purdue's Steve Worley looked at the live feed for us today and continues to estimate up to 4 million gallons a day has been gushing from 2 leaks.
By watching the oil coming out of the end of the riser tube today on the live feed, that there's still a substantial amount of oil discharging into the Gulf of Mexico.
The members of Congress who saw the video accused BP of trying to hide the truth.
BP has lost all credibility.
If the Purdue scientist is correct, Katie, then this leak in just 3 days surpassed that of the Exxon Valdez in 1989.
Cheryl, do you think that BP could face criminal charges as a result of all this?
Well, that's the possibility that some senators think, because 8 of them have asked for a criminal investigation. They've talked to the U.S. Attorney General. They want to know about the circumstances surrounding the permit of BP to drill here. BP was only granted the permit after assuring that they had safety precautions in place and that a leak like this would never happen. Katie?
All right, Cheryl Atkinson reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. Thank you, Cheryl. President Obama is appointing a commission to study what went wrong, and CBS News has learned former Democratic Senator Bob Graham of Florida and William Riley, who headed the EPA under the first President Bush, will lead the panel. BP, meanwhile, is in charge of the response to the oil leak, but as Cheryl Atkinson reports, some in Congress are pointing fingers at the Obama administration, saying it's not putting enough pressure on the oil company.
5,000 feet deep, oil still gushes nonstop, no longer out of sight thanks to the live feed BP was forced to make public. And a lead congressman says patience has run out.
The American people want this leak plugged now. They are outraged. This is an all-hands-on-deck crisis. And we need to use every asset the United States has, including the Defense Department, and all of its most sophisticated technology.
Markey and others are taking issue with the Obama administration's approach so far of leaving it up to BP.
They have the legal responsibility and the technical expertise to plug the hole.
Or do they? They haven't plugged it in 31 days, and today the press corps hammered away.
But if they're not getting the job done, does the government just stand there as a spectator and hope for the best?
Chip, there's nothing that would denote that the federal government has stood there and hoped for the best.
Gibbs says the Obama administration has been aggressive, prodding BP and asking it for more data and information.
You order them to do that rather than
Because
asking them to do that.
you can't do that from a private company.
You took over AIG.
Well, the company is largely in receivership. That's this.
Today, CBS News obtained more undersea video, turned over 11 days after Congress found out about it and demanded it. Another clip showing an apparent attempt to cap the well on May 6th, and more video apparently showing use of toxic chemical dispersants to break up the oil, a strategy that one scientist today called unthinkable.
It's a PR stunt to dissolve this oil with dispersants. It's just to get it away from the cameras on the shoreline.
BP had already used hundreds of thousands of gallons of dispersant before the EPA ordered a halt earlier this week. They will be allowed to continue using dispersants, but with less toxic chemicals. Katie?
Cheryl Atkinson on Capitol Hill. Thank you. As for how many thousands of gallons that is, there are all kinds of estimates. And as Cheryl Atkinson reports, plenty of reasons to doubt them.
CBS News has learned the government's estimate of how much oil is gushing from the well could get much worse. Last week, the Interior Department announced the range was 12 to 19,000 barrels, or up to 798,000 gallons per day. But that's not exactly what some scientists who worked on the estimate found.
Sources tell CBS News 12 to 19,000 barrels is actually the minimum believed leaking from the well based on the most conservative assumptions. The upper end of the range, a maximum, hasn't yet been released.
But those details were left off the official government press release, making it seem like 19,000 barrels a day was the most, not the least, that could be gushing out.
12 and 19,000 barrels a day.
12,000 to 19,000.
The range matters because BP is subject to fines of up to $4,300 for each 42-gallon barrel. It could mean a difference of millions of gallons and billions of dollars. Under the government's low estimate, BP's fine could be $2 billion for just the first 40 days. If the spill is significantly larger, as sources suggest, the fine could shoot upwards of $4 billion so far.
Today, facing criticism that it was spinning the numbers, the Interior Department revised its website to acknowledge that scientists are working on it, but have not yet released the high end of just how big the leak could be. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
If you have a question about the disaster,